Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix all have one thing in common. They all have made stunning portrayals of perhaps one of the most iconic, villainous, deranged, cinematic masterpieces of all time. And that is the Joker. In this episode of Inside the Cinematic Mind, we are going to explore the character, we're going to explore the impact on society, and we're going to explore how particularly the three different portrayals, the three very different portrayals, ultimately have been reflections upon society at the time. Welcome to this episode of Inside the Cinematic Mind. From a psychological point of view, the character of the Joker happens to be one of the most interesting cases and subjects that anybody could ever study. He is Batman's arch nemesis. He is the most iconic villain within the DC universe. He is the one who was capable of making a psychologist fall in love with him. He is the one that turned the lovely Harlequin into something very evil and very deranged. He exposed something that was already there within her, and a character well worth our time and study. First of all, we have to look at the character as a whole. When you actually explore the character of the Joker, you can understand what it is that make a Joker do what he did. Now, certain film portrayals will portray him in different ways. The latest one by Joaquin Phoenix portrays the Joker as if he hates his mother. That his mother always battered him down, his mother always did this, his mother always told him that he wasn't good enough, he'd never amount to anything. That can make people snap. Jack Nicholson's version doesn't really see much that goes on, but in Heath Ledger's version, the story furthers a little bit more. That his father was the one that cut him. That his father was the one that always wanted him to permanently smile. In the several portrayals of the Joker, there is one that really gets to the root of it that I believe makes the Joker snap. For those of you that don't know, there was more of a mature animated series that was created of the DC universe and DC characters. And this scene from the animated series is what I believe leads the Joker to become unhinged.
What do you mean, oh?
I didn't mean anything.
Yes, you did. The way you said, oh, like that.
Jesus, all I said was...
You said, oh. It's an oh, so you didn't get the job. Isn't, oh, I should have known. Isn't, oh, so how are we going to feed our baby? Oh, God, I'm sorry. I don't mean to take this out on you. You're suffering enough being married to a loser.
Honey, that's not...
Yes, it is true. I can't support you. Oh, Jeannie. Incident this morning. Testing a baby bottle heater. An electrical short and my wife died.
Gee, that's terrible. We're really sorry. Probably want to be alone, right? That's cool. We'll see you back here tonight.
Tonight? I can't. There's no reason anymore. Jeannie's dead.
Oh, no. I'm sorry about your wife. But what's happening tonight, it's no little thing. And we can't ensure that anybody backing out remains healthy. Money by cutting you in on this.
Right now? Will I be able to breathe?
Not if you smoke.
That's a good one.
Maybe I should be looking into your line of work instead of you looking into mine. Man, which way?
I can't see where I'm going. I deserve this.
So, Red Hood, we meet again.
Stay away from me. Don't come any closer, monster.
Abused by his father. And now all of a sudden, you have the death of somebody who you love, who you've escaped this kind of narcissistic, psychopathic, sociopathic behavior that you grew up with, and now you found someone who loves you, who's sweet, who's amazing, who's kind, who's all the things that you really, really prize above everything else. And what happens is, you come home and you find that she has been killed. I firmly believe, ladies and gentlemen that are watching, that human beings are born with strands connected to the divine. That is why, when we are young, we can do a lot of amazing things. We can absorb things like sponges. We are probably at our most holy and our most spiritually enlightened when we are first born. Now, if you imagine all down your arms, all down the backs of your legs, all down your spine, that there are like roots, like tree roots that connect you to the divine, and that every time you do something that kind of breaks away from that divinity, one of those tree roots snaps, and it never comes back. If you imagine them as cords. Here's the thing. When you are growing and when you are young, you are designed to break some of those things, okay? They need to be broken. Like standing up for yourself. Like walking out in your own light and choosing your own path. Simply walking forward, saying no to your parents. All of these things are designed. Growing itself is designed. But there are many things in this life that we as human beings get into through allure, through temptation, through curiosity, that we're not designed for. That quite frankly are not only an abomination against God, they're an abomination against science and nature. The problem with all of these things, ladies and gentlemen, is that the further and further that we take that boundary, that line, that development, the more and more of ourselves we lose, the more and more of our humanity we lose. And as I was preparing for this and really thinking about this particular topic, I believe firmly that the character of the Joker and the portrayal that the films lay out are a direct reflection on society. You look at the Jack Nicholson version, it was more a little bit goofy, but there was a little bit of dark stuff in there. That was 90s, that was going on, sort of end of 80s, beginning of 90s. You look at the Heath Ledger version, that was even darker, enough to give you nightmares. But again, a reflection of society. You look at the Joaquin Phoenix version, and we now live in a world where we can blur the lines as far as we want. where literally you can have somebody go into a talk show and shoot somebody in the face.
Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray? Do you ever actually leave the studio? Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. You think men like Thomas Wayne ever think what it's like to be someone like me? To be somebody but themselves? They don't. They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys. That
2 policemen are in critical condition. You're laughing. You're laughing. Someone was killed today because of what you did.
I know. How about another joke, Murray?
No, I think we've had enough of your jokes.
What do you get
I don't think so.
when you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with your
loner
jokes.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash?
Call the police,
I'll
Gene.
tell you what you get.
Call the police.
You get what you fucking deserve.
Without conscience, without any thought at all. Have you noticed how society has changed and is constantly changing as these films come out? It filters down. Little bit more, little bit more, little bit more. Only in this kind of world and only in this kind of film can you have a society that have broken away from their divinity, that have broken away from all that makes them whole and pure, and favoured the darkness that makes them miserable. And that is much like the character of the Joker. The world is sick because the mind of man is sick. Now that's an interesting comparison. You see here with the Joker how, you know, he does one thing after another, after another, after another. He makes a whole host of decisions, each one more negative and negative and negative. And he gets to a point where he doesn't care who he hurts. Harlequin comes in, he manipulates her, she'll do anything for him. And that, my friends, is where we have to define whether the Joker is a psychopath or a sociopath. Now, to give you an indication, and I think it's really important to understand this, a sociopath, by definition, displays antisocial behavior because of environmental factors, such as what the Joker went through. A psychopath is someone who gets the disorder because of genetic predisposition. So I think we can safely rule out the fact that the Joker is a psychopath, and we go with the film that he is a sociopath. He can form quite normal relationships and even have legitimate close friends. He has impulsive behavior, which means that he rarely stays with one job for a long period of time. But they can become respected members of society. The actions of a psychopath are usually unplanned and leave a lot of clues. Whereas a sociopath will literally go around hacking people up. They don't feel empathy. They don't have really loving relationships. They don't have a conscience and feel unable to quit. The interesting thing is, I mean, with regards to the Joker, I know a lot of psychologists will frown upon this and say, well, you can't call them psychopaths or sociopaths. They're just this and this and this because we want to water down everything. No, we need to be very, very clear here as to what's going on. I'm not in the least bit interested about a person's feelings. I would rather get to the root and help them, okay? And I think a lot of the time in the watering down and being very protective of people's feelings, that we're doing more harm than good. We don't call a spade or a club a club. We call it an instrument. When you look at the Joker's background, you look at what's gone on in his life, you look at those 3 very, very different stories where his father has abused him, his mother has mentally abused him, and he's lost the love of his life. If you combine all 3 of those together, it's no wonder why something snapped inside him. Remember those strands we talked about right at the beginning of the show? They broke one by one by one by one, until the point he was never able to be whole again. Many people have faced this in their own lives, that they just become empty shells, vessel-less voids in their own existence. When we look at the character of the Joker, particularly Joaquin Phoenix's version of the Joker, it is as dark can get. There really are no redeeming features to this person. He just goes about his life for him, doing whatever he wants. Believing, insanely enough as it is, that he's doing a service to humanity. Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of the Joker, particularly in three specific scenes. One, where he has an entire family and he takes off their faces. Secondly, where he goes and shoots a show host squarely in the face. And the interesting thing about this as well, again, the portrayal is that it doesn't cut away. The scene doesn't cut away in the film. And we see Joaquin Phoenix blow Robert De Niro's brains out. His brain's blown out all over the back of a studio wall. And the final scene with regards to Joker and in his previous life, where he's severed all ties, all the strands are gone to anything divine and good inside him, is where he suffocates his mother, his poor defenseless, lifeless mother. Now, I've been asked many times before, have I seen this film? And it's closely followed up by the sentence, it's such a good film. Well, I think first of all we've got to take a look, a real cold hard look at what it means to be a good film. Now, if you mean that the cinematic projection, the production, the acting, the everything else is done so well that you can't tell the difference whether it's reality or fiction, then yeah, that's done. That's definitely done. But if you mean that this is a film that you're going to show to everyone and anyone they know, my friends, it's not a good film. It is a direct reflection on how society has blurred the lines and how filmmaking has blurred the lines where we can't tell the difference. And people always say, well, what's the issue, John? What's the issue, John? Well, for the unknowing of you, I will inform you as to what the issue is. The brain, being the wonderful host that it is, has many, many flaws. One of them in particular is that it can't tell the difference between reality and fiction. Now, why is this dangerous, you ask? Well, Krishnamurti in the 1950s said that TV, media, early films at that time, obviously what it has become, would be the death of humanity. Look at the dumbing down of society that is being claimed. Look at the increase in murders. Look at the increase in bombings. Look at the increase in terrorism. Look at the increase in school massacres. Look at the increase in paedophiles. Look at the increase in pornography. Look at the increase in people that are being treated for severe mental health issues. Look at the increase in transgender cases. Look at the increase, look at the increase, look at the increase. If you actually break this down, and I'm really glad that we're doing this, look at films from the 1950s onwards. That's really where the main... You've got a lot of really, big films, obviously, that come out in the 1920s and things, but really look at from the 1950s where it's uninterrupted by war. From the 1950s to the 1960s, there's very little change. It paints. The 1960s to the 1970s, again, there's very little change in people's mood. But you're now starting to have horror films that are being created. Now look from the 70s onwards. 70s to the 80s, crime rises. Sex incidents has happened. Murders. Now, I'm not saying that these things weren't already going on. They were. But if there is one thing that spiritual practitioners have taught me, it is that we reap what we sow more than what we sow, later than what we sow. Continue this forward, and you now see from the 80s to the 90s a massive increase in depression cases, a massive increase in mental health issues that were before they were even diagnosed as mental health issues. A massive increase in gang culture and crime in the United States and in the United Kingdom. Now again, these things have always gone on. It's important to be aware of that. But now it has become increased. That the Joker, in all three variations that we've talked about, Nicholson, Ledger, Phoenix, all, despite what they had done, had potential to turn around and say, nope, that's it, I'm turning away from this. And yet they didn't. They made one decision after another, after another, after another that had negative consequences to lead to a point where a vigilante such as the Batman, who is a whole other case entirely, had to intervene. Folks, we are living in that world where cartoon characters once inhabited. We are entering into that world where Arkham looks very much like New York. Maybe a little bit darker. Maybe another 20 or 30 years and it'll be there. If you want to have world peace, you need the population of 9.6 billion people on the planet to have inner peace. That's how you get a peaceful world. When you start taking care of yourself and I start taking care of myself, and we focus on being peaceful, then that's when the mind of man will become at peace. When the mind of man becomes at peace, the world becomes at peace. Characters like the Joker are always really interesting characters to observe. Every single one of the DC villain in the DC Villains universe has a backstory. Whether it's Harlequin's lack of finding love, constantly feeling overlooked, whether it's the Joker's father putting him down, abusing him, slashing open his face, his mother abusing him by being narcissistic, putting him down all the time, his wife being murdered, Solomon Grundy, The Thing. Everyone has a story to tell. And it's the important thing as we reach the end of our show today that we remember that every single person on this planet is but a character in a much bigger picture and also has their own story to tell. The option now, as you go forth in this day, whether or not your story will be a horror story, a thriller, a romance or a comedy. And you choose it all from the moment you say enough. Thank you so much for watching Inside the Cinematic Mind. If you have enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share and subscribe because it helps our little channel grow. We reach more people and we can get our message out to more and more of the population around the world. Until next time, take care, God bless, and we'll see you very, very soon on Inside the Cinematic Mind.